West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to particularly try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We are still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
We came here to Foster City, where we're going to watch UC Berkeley, a University of California SWAT team, do a hostage rescue scenario.
All personnel aware of the proper protection of women. This includes all personnel identified as staff, students, role players, EIDs, and support staff. Feet, eyes, throat, and drawing protection is mandatory and should be worn at all times by personnel directly involved in or near the scenario. Always check your masks prior to use to ensure there are no cracks in the mask and the safe working conditions.
Should I put the water in there now?
Yeah, go ahead. This is like some kind of chemical agent?
Yeah. Copy, we're ready. I'm gonna get shot. I already know it, dude. Fiend's yelling at me.
Help me. Your hands. Help me. Your hands. Back away.
Gentlemen, we have a chemical. We need to pull our person out. Get these guys out of here. Pull them out.
Put your hands on your face. Put your hands on your face.
Keep him covered.
Your head up. He's got a shotgun back there.
That's all right. Keep his hands up where we can.
Hands on your face.
Hands on your face. On your face.
Someone cover me. I got a holster up, bro.
Okay, pull him around the corner. Pick him up. Get him out of the building. Quickly. We've got this. Let's get that guy out of there. You, come towards us. Keep your hands on your face. Turn around. Face away from us. Back towards us. Quickly. Back up towards me. Quickly. Pull him out of the room.
We're exfilling, Billy?
Yes, we are exfilling.
It was actually around 92, 94, there was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus. And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place. So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team. So they regenerated the idea of activating a SWAT team.
And then since then, you guys have kind of branched out to doing what kind of stuff?
Well, since then, we train for everything. We train for every eventuality, barricaded subjects. Like I said, most of what we do is high-risk warrants.
And it's something like it could be like a mugging kind of thing.
Just like on the street?
Depends.
Or
I mean,
like
a mugging, but if it's armed, particularly.
Right, unarmed mugging, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And then, obviously, we're looking for training for anything else that we might be faced with. And that's what's great about Urban Shield is, we couldn't duplicate this on our own.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning. It's 6 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, senior congressional correspondent for the Daily Beast, and I'm in with Aswin Subsang, social media deputy director at the Daily Beast. We're going to be co-hosting today in for Bill Press, who is out enjoying some sun in Cuba.
I have to tell you guys, it's been a week of guest hosts, and we've had a lot of guests in studio. And they're always
and
like,
you're most excited today.
And we're telling everybody, we're like, oh yeah, what are you guys doing all week? Who's hosting? And then we get to Friday, they're like, yeah, Tim Mack and Aswin Subsang are hosting on Friday, and everybody has the same general reaction.
Jaw to the floor.
What are you guys doing? And I said, no, this is going to be so much fun.
I mean, both of us have been on this show quite a bit before.
Yeah.
You have a lot of fun with us. We have a lot of fun here. But I think the jaw to the floor from people who hear this might come from the fact that Tim and I are both Asian American reporters at the Daily Beast. We live together. We work together.
Yeah.
We love together.
Yes, we love together.
We eat, pray, and love together.
Yeah.
And now you co-host together.
And they gave us a show.
So this is your maiden voyage. This is your maiden voyage. I, for one, could not be happier or more excited. I'm thrilled to see how this plays out.
Hey, I'm totally excited. And we
may or may not have a show next week, depending on how this goes. It may just be like a crater where the Bill Press Show used to be. I am excited to see how it goes.
Well, what better way to go out than 3 hours of Asian guys talking?
And Bill Press.
And yes. And the trusted Peter Ogburn.
Yes, that's right.
Sure, man. Happy to be here. I'm thrilled to have you guys here.
So we got a lot of great topics for the show today. We're going to be talking about ISIS and the reign of terror that they are visiting upon people in Iraq and Syria. We're going to be talking about the Patriot Act. That deadline is coming up at the end of the month. We've got conversations about Hillary Clinton's emails. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We have word on what the final plans will be for the B.B. King funeral and memorial service. Begins this weekend, actually tomorrow, May 23rd. A memorial service is going to be held in Las Vegas. Then on Wednesday, May 27th, his remains will be flown to Memphis, which there will be a procession down Beale Street all the way to Handy Park, where he used to play on the street as a street musician, and his final resting place will be in Indianola, Mississippi. So they're going to have that service actually Friday of next week. Those details coming out yesterday, so they're going to lay him to rest.
That's going to be a great jam session.
Right?
In the sky.
Yeah, right, man. Yeah, totally.
Funny B.B. King fun fact. Did you know he was incredibly tight with the notorious Republican strategist Lee Atwater?
I did, yes.
Notorious.
Yes. I knew that. Notorious is, I think, an appropriate word for Lee Atwater. Yeah. Yeah. Lee Atwater was a great guitar player.
Yeah, and not a bad singer. He actually had a blues and boogie album and an R&B album on which B.B. King is featured.
I didn't know he had an album.
Along with Carla Thomas and Sam Moore.
Kind of want to stack that up against the Bernie Sanders.
Epic Bernie Sanders folk album. The Lee Atwater album is better.
I haven't heard the Lee Atwater.
Yeah. David Letterman is no more. His late show is, he is gone as the host of the Late Show. He's retired.
He's still alive.
He's still alive. He's not going from one death story to David Letterman retiring. David Letterman retired.
Let's pour one out for him.
We got the final numbers for his final broadcast, which happened on Wednesday evening. David Letterman's final Late Show broadcast brought in 16.7 million viewers. That is the show's largest audience since February of 1994. So
That's when he had Oprah on, right?
Yeah, he's going out on top. And I don't... do you guys play Words with Friends? Do you do the Words with Friends thing?
This is like that's very 2012.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore. But there's good news if you do play Words with Friends or Scrabble. They have a new, their grammar book, right? Where they put in new words every now and then that are acceptable to play. These are because they go by the rules of Scrabble. Scrabble has new words that are okay to play if you are playing Scrabble. Just some of the words. Cake hole.
What?
Is that hyphenated?
This is no, it's all one word.
There's no
cake
hyphen.
Hole. There's no hyphen.
There's no hyphen. You can't.
Wait, no, cake hole has to be hyphenated.
Cake hole's not hyphenated. It's like pie hole. Shut your pie hole. Shut your cake hole.
Is that I've never heard anyone use that word.
You never heard pie hole?
No, never heard cake hole.
Yeah, neither
Cake hole is a newish thing, I guess.
I don't believe that it exists.
Also, you could use in Scrabble sexting.
Okay,
well,
that's
a little racy.
And also, I hate this one. Lulz, L-O-L-Z.
I appreciate lulz, and I've heard of lulz, but I think that cake hole is probably the result of a Scrabble game that went way too far. It's like, of course, cake holes. I'm going to get this into the dictionary. You know,
it's like chairs were thrown, friends were lost.
Yeah, onesie is also in there. Twerking is now acceptable to play in Scrabble.
Of course, I don't know. I think if we were playing Scrabble, there would be no dispute as to whether twerking was an appropriate word.
No, it's a generational thing.
It's a generational.
But also, I have to go back to lulz.
Yeah.
Is it... Okay, wait, never mind. They're all capital letters.
L-O-L-Z or L-U-L-Z.
It's L-O-L.
Or L-O-L-S.
L-O-L-S. I don't see L-O-L-S.
But there are no lowercase letters in Scrabble, right?
Right.
Because if you spell it lowercase L-O-L, lowercase Z, then I think that's wrong.
Yeah,
like,
right. There's also B-E-Z-Z-Y, Bezzy. Bezzy.
What
does anybody know what Bezzy is?
Does that mean busy?
No idea.
It's like it means best friend. This is my Bezzy.
You're Bezzy.
No, that's not a word. I've never heard that.
That doesn't get to be in Scrabble. We got to write a strongly worded letter.
We take a stand. We're taking a stand.
We're starting to lose touch with the people here if we don't understand what Bezzy is.
We're getting old.
Yeah. Now I really do feel old.
It's terrible.
All right.
Okay. Well, anyway, we got a great show coming up, a great lineup of guests. We have George Zornick of The Nation, and after that we got Ben C. Jacobs of The Guardian, a fine English publication. Dave Weigel, roving reporter at Bloomberg News. Olivia Nuzzi, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. I should be, given that she's our colleague at the Daily Beast. And, of course, Billy Martin, the guitar player for Good Charlotte.
Because why not here on the Bill Press Show?
An eclectic lineup of pop culture and politics, one might say.
Well, it's fitting for the Daily Beast takeover of the Bill Press Show.
Seems about right.
Yeah.
When we talk about that. So we're going to start off today with a controversial topic. We're going to be taking your calls on the Bill Press line, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. We're going to be talking about the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is, in parts of it, in particular, Section 215 is going to expire at the end of this month. And this is the controversial metadata collection provision. This is the part that the government has used to justify the mass collection of phone call records and other data records. Not your phone calls, the content itself, but who you've been calling, the length of the call, the location of people when they make those calls. It's been very controversial. One person who's been very, very adamant that this should not be renewed is Senator Rand Paul. He spent close to 12 hours on the Senate floor doing what he called a filibuster, trying to delay the reauthorization. Here's what he had to say about the Patriot Act and privacy.
There comes a time in the history of nations when fear and complacency allow power to accumulate and liberty and privacy to suffer. That time is now, and I will not let the Patriot Act, the most unpatriotic of acts, go unchallenged.
And here's the thing. Rand Paul referred to Obama's executive orders, which is what actually started this program. We found out about it as a result of the Snowden leaks a little while back. But Rand Paul was essentially saying the president started this, he can end it.
The president began this program by executive order. He should immediately end it through executive order.
So the Senate right now is considering a couple options. They could let this program lapse entirely, and the intelligence community has said, hey, we don't think that this is a good idea, this is a useful tool. They could make reforms to it. The House has passed some reforms in a bill called the USA Freedom Act. Or they could just reauthorize it as it's been since 2001 or so. Swin, what do you think about this? I mean, this is a hot-button topic. A lot of people weighing in on this. Would love some callers to weigh in on this as well, but let's go to you first. Where are you on this? What are you hearing?
Well, I've never doubted the government's ability or capacity to crush civil liberties or reach beyond authority with or without the Patriot Act. So I am totally okay with it expiring. And since you've been covering this quite a bit, can you talk a little bit about Section 215 among the other controversial provisions that has been up for discussion over the last however long?
Yeah, okay. So there are three major provisions that are up for expiration. It's called the 215, the 215 section, and that's the one, like I said, that justifies the bulk collection of data about your communications. There's another one called the Roving wiretap provision, which allows the government, when they tap your phone, to tap other forms of communications as well. And there's what's called the lone wolf provision, and that allows the government to investigate individuals who don't have serious ties with known terrorist groups or anything like that.
And among civil libertarians, isn't the argument that Section 215 was never actually intended to apply to mass collection of metadata or...
Yeah, there's no in law, there's no actual description of such a program that involves the mass collection of metadata. The government has just perceived the law to mean that they can take all the information. Basically, it allows the government to take information. And the government has interpreted that to mean that they can use that process to take all information, collect all information, and then query it and make questions of it and search it as they like with a warrant.
Well, Peter, what are your thoughts on this? Do you like the Patriot Act, or do you hate America? What's
well framed. Well framed. This is one of these interesting issues that we on this show, which I think is safe to say we have a fairly liberal audience. The Patriot Act has been a boogeyman for people that listen to the show for a long, long time, and so it's interesting to me that the most vocal person, the largest, loudest voice out there is a Republican, a libertarian, but a Republican. It's
libertarian-ish.
Libertarian-ish, right? People always get mad when we refer to him as a libertarian because he is a libertarian when he wants to be, but then he's a Republican when he wants to be. But
it's like he's running for president or something.
Yeah. The thing that I always come back to is, where are the Democrats on this? I know Ron Wyden has been fairly outspoken on it, but he's not going as far as Rand Paul. Why aren't there more Democrats that are talking about the problems with the Patriot Act, getting rid of the Patriot Act, getting back away from this thing? It seems odd to me that it's Rand Paul. And I think we need to give Rand Paul credit. Rand Paul is doing a good thing. As someone said yesterday, a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. Rand Paul was right on the drone strikes. Rand Paul was right on the Patriot Act. We talked about it on the show. We took a lot of grief for it.
Well, he's pretty spot on with mandatory minimum sentences.
Yes, absolutely. He's right on some things, and we need to acknowledge that. But I think it's weird that there's not just an outcry from Democrats on this.
Yeah, I think a lot of Democrats behind the scenes believe that there is a necessity for some authority for intelligence agencies. I think if we turn around and there is, God forbid, some sort of terrorist attack, they feel we might be blamed for this. That if we didn't take a stand. But we'd love to get some listeners to call in here. Again, the show's hotline is 866-55-PRESS. 866-557-7377. I think there are a lot of political repercussions here. Let's not forget that Rand Paul is also running for president, and that might have had something to do with the fact that he stood for 12 hours on the Senate floor talking about this and that. But you're right. I mean, he has a very interesting background and a very interesting way of looking at things. It's not just drone strikes. It's not just civil liberties. He's also had very interesting things to say about law enforcement, body cameras, the degree that police in this country are getting
race
militarized.
relations, how involved we should be in foreign conflicts.
Yeah, he has a very atypical point of view that cuts across typical Republican and Democratic lines.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, so it's super interesting. But what is imminent right now is the Senate needs to do something, or allow these sections to expire. That's coming up at the end of the month. The House has already left. The House of Representatives is off on vacation.
Memorial Day weekend, man.
I'd love to be on it already. Head down to
why
the
are we
beach.
at the beach right now? The sun is out.
What's more fun than this? Are
Why
you
haven't
kidding?
we? Why didn't we set up this radio show at the beach?
We could have done it.
Has
We
the
could have
sun
brought our
risen outside
Mi-Fis. And it has indeed.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, I'm Tim Mack, senior congressional correspondent with the Daily Beast. I'm here with That's When Soup Saying and Peter Ogborn. We're going to be back after a short break.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Silicon Valley's Santa Clara County is often portrayed as a role model for the rest of the country. The county has some of the highest salaries and most expensive real estate in America, thanks in large part to the phenomenal success of tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, Intel, Adobe, and of course Apple, the nation's wealthiest and most profitable company. But Santa Clara County also has a more unseemly distinction. I'm standing near downtown San Jose, inside what is by some accounts the largest homeless encampment in America. The Jungle, as it's known, occupies a 65-acre stretch of creek where about 300 people live in makeshift structures. It's less of a homeless encampment than a full-blown shantytown.
This being the largest homeless encampment in the United States, and with us having Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs and all this cash, we're not supposed to have this kind of homeless problem. You know what I mean?
I done been shot with a pellet gun like 4 times, attacked with baseball bats, my house set on fire.
This is like hell on earth. I mean, this is like something you will not see. You have to see to believe, actually. It's like fourth world conditions.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called the Jungle?
Sorry?
A place called the Jungle, have you heard of it?
We're not making enough money really for conventional homes or housing, and we make too much money for subsidized homes. So we're kind of, floating between the oil and the water.
We told the landlady here if it would be possible to continue staying here. She said, no, you got to go. I already rented it out. And we went and loaded things into a storage facility, and it's still there. And all the campgrounds and things that we saw were too far out of the city, like KOAs and that sort of thing. So what we decided to do was to move into the jungle. So that's what we did.
A few days ago, a woman named Lydia Hernandez was robbed inside of her tent. When she refused to hand over the money, the robbers slit her throat. When she still fought back, they bashed her head with an axe. She died a few hours later. Residents say that the police never come into the jungle, so they have to fend for themselves.
There's no law down there except our own, right? There's no law, so we could smoke dope all day in the open. The dope dealers ain't scared because they're secure.
We go to the Fairmont Hotel and have a brunch or do a philanthropy. That's not going to cut it. We need billions of dollars to go into the inner cities and go into the jungle. Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is known for its innovation, its progressive thinking. It's one of the most progressive pockets in the United States, if not the world, and certainly one of the wealthiest. If we can't do it here, it won't happen anywhere. It's got to happen here.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Good morning. It's 26 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, senior correspondent with the Daily Beast, with my sidekick, Aswin Soupsang. Sidekick. What did I say?
Sidekick.
Sidekick.
Sidekick. That's not. Well,
side child.
Let's ask Scrabble if that's a thing.
Let me try that. We are looking at a very interesting situation. The gyrocopter guy, the guy who decided to fly and land on the Capitol lawn, he's facing 9 years for what he terms as civil disobedience against the government over the issue of campaign finance reform.
There was no property damage and no injury, and the purpose of my civil disobedience was to get Congress and the federal government so that they're working for the people instead of special interests.
They're coming at him, and they're coming at him super hard. And one of the charges that they threw at him is because he had this Postal Service logo on the back of his gyrocopter. They're charging him with impersonating a postal vehicle, which is apparently a thing. And it all adds up to him going to jail for over 9 years.
Can any of us think of a case in recent American history where someone has been threatened or face a potential 9 years prison sentence or a greater or longer prison sentence for breaking campaign finance law?
No, I mean, candidates all the time take too much money from individual donors.
Yeah.
They make mistakes in their accounting, and they get called out on it, and nothing happens.
Right.
And so we've got this gyrocopter guy who's trying to bring attention to this problem, and he's getting the book thrown at him. So if you want to call in and chat about this, our hotline is 866-55-PRESS. Again, that's 866-557-7377.
Am I crazy for thinking that 9 years is just way too severe? That seems like way too severe a sentence for this.
Well, there are people who actually commit violent crimes who don't get 9 years.
Right. No. Right. 866-55-PRESS.
Yeah, call in.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? You gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement. Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court, the same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone. And there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper, is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, just the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look. I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I can just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it. So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them too.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community together, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, being in the city together. But forgiving each other, being grateful to each other, helping each other out, living together, living together.
I got a daughter just turned 4. What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earth-alleluia.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning. This is The Bill Press Show. It's 33 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, in for Bill Press, who's out of town for the week. And I'm here co-hosting with Aswin Soupsang. We're both from the Daily Beast. We're joined by Peter Ogburn.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so happy to be here, actually.
Although,
I'm thrilled.
Good old Bill gets to be on Sunny Beach in Cuba right
Yeah, Bill's
now,
in
right?
Cuba right now, which I guess really can only strengthen his leftist commie pinko credentials.
Is he bringing back a bunch of cigars?
All right,
here's
here's the directive I gave him. I told him, if you're going to go to Cuba, you're going to have to bring me back some Cuban rum, number one.
All right.
And some Cuban cigars. I don't even smoke cigars, but I will smoke a Cuban cigar.
He is
right here in studio.
He's legally allowed to bring back $100 worth of, combined. So $100 worth of Cuban cigars or $100 worth of rum and Cuban cigars. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, thanks, Obama. I'm sure he'll find a way to smuggle back a little bit extra, right? Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, how many bags is he bringing down there?
Need?
I just need a cigar.
You don't smoke.
I don't smoke cigars, but I just want to smoke a Cuban cigar.
I wonder if they're overrated. I mean, because
Probably.
they've been so
They gotta
hyped
be,
up.
right?
They're
They
so
have to be
hyped up
overrated.
because they're not allowed.
Right. They have to be overrated.
There's this allure.
There are some people who swear, that these are the greatest things. I don't know.
I mean, I've had confession time. I've tried Cuban cigars before. Yeah, I know.
Oh, you're this big broadcast, right?
Don't kick me out of the studio just yet.
Den of sin.
Get the cops on the line.
I mean, I am the kind of guy who can't really tell the difference between like black box red wine and like the greatest bottle you've ever heard of. So I don't have a very discerning tongue on this. So
yeah.
I mean, overrated. Well, it depends on who's smoking it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm excited to try it, so I'm not going to let you steal my joy.
Yeah. It'll be the greatest feeling. It'll be better than sex. You'll have a great time.
That's what I needed to hear.
You're going to smoke it on the Bill Press show, right?
Yeah, I should, right?
In the studio.
Yeah.
It'll be very foggy for YouTube.
Smell will hang. It will hang
exactly. Bill's
in
going
the
to
studio.
love that.
Yeah.
Although we came this close to smoking actual marijuana on air because it's legal in D.C. now.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't stick to the walls. Get some
I thought that's
ventilation.
just something you do.
It's still.
You thought we always.
That's on Free Speech TV and Talker TV.
That's right.
As well as online.
That's right.
Now, we're going to change topics a little bit here and talk about ISIS. This has been a bad week for the American strategy with regard to ISIS. Up till late last week, the Pentagon, the Obama administration were saying, we're winning this war against ISIS. We're winning this war. The strategy is right. It's correct. This is going to happen properly. This week, however, the State Department had a bit of a different line after the Iraq city of Ramadi fell and the Syrian city of Palmyra with its ancient ruins, which are now under threat by ISIS fell. Here's what Marie Harf, the State Department spokesperson, had to say.
We are not sugarcoating what happened in Ramadi here and how it is very serious.
And here's the thing. ISIS now holds a very large portion of both Iraq and Syria. We're talking about half of all Syrian space. Harf also touched on her administration's assessment of that territory and how much it controlled.
We don't agree with their calculations on this. We certainly don't deny that ISIL holds significant territory in Syria, but we don't agree with those calculations.
And the funny thing is that the administration has always been, and we've written about this on the Daily Beast, has always been underestimating the amount of territory that ISIS controls. And this is a very optimistic view of where they can project violence and where they can actually terrorize people in Iraq and Syria.
Well, you've been doing some good reporting on maps that the Obama administration has been putting out regarding territory that ISIS has taken. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that sort of fudges the numbers or fudges the geographies?
Yeah, I mean, the Pentagon put out this map that basically ignored half of Syria, that didn't really address the territories where ISIS controls. They have a line to push, and that's important to remember when you're reading media accounts or reading or listening to quotes from administration spokespeople, is that they are not necessarily trying to put the most clear-eyed version of the story out there. They're trying to spin it as if the war is successful.
Well, what was the intellectual justification of, as you put, like ignoring half of Syria? What?
I mean, there isn't they just said that the map didn't involve half of Syria, but
they just said like this half of Syria doesn't exist.
Well, no, I mean, we were not addressing that part of Syria when we made this map. That would be the administration line. And beyond the map, even now they're saying, I mean, if you talk to the White House, if you talk to the Pentagon or the State Department, they'll say, we're not really interested in changing the broader strategy against ISIS right now. We're not interested in putting more resources on the ground. We want to keep pushing forward on this. We're still trying to go with this 3-year plan to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIS.
And an interview that Obama gave this week to Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic, he again repeated his line, which he seems to always slip in when he's asked about whether the American strategy or the U.S.-led strategy against ISIS is faltering, that, look, if the Iraqi military can't stand up and take care of this in their own backyard, in their own hood, then we cannot do that for them. So,
right. And the White House this week, Josh Earnest, responded to this idea that the United States might send more troops or reinvade Iraq. Here's what he had to say.
I say it with full confidence. The president will not be comfortable with the full-scale reinvasion of Iraq by the United States military. That is a strategy that did not serve the long-term interests of the United States.
Yeah, and here's the thing. What's the strategy beyond invasion to push ISIS back? They've been quite resilient, continuing to take territory, continuing to terrorize individuals despite American and coalition airstrikes there.
Well, in terms of not ISIS in Iraq, but ISIS in Syria, there's been reporting and talk for a while now how one of the ways they were able to flourish or do so well in Syria is that Bashar al-Assad's regime had essentially gone out of its way not to try to decimate them or not attack them and focus on the so-called moderate or more liberal Syrian opposition. Have, in your reporting and in what you've your reporting lately and how you've been observing the situation in Syria, have you seen more of a shift on the Assad administration's side in terms of maybe trying to crack down on ISIS more?
No, you're not seeing a ton of engagement between the Assad regime and ISIS. What you are seeing is, because there's so much confusion and destruction sowed by ISIS, you see the Assad regime continuing to attack civilian populations with chlorine gas, dropping bombs from the sky from helicopters. You see a despicable campaign of terror against innocent people in Syria by their own leader, the Assad regime. Even as ISIS just took a government-held. I mean, it is all of the situation in Syria and Iraq right now is devastation, a lot of death, a lot of suffering.
Let me ask you guys a question, and this is a good question for our people listening or watching at 866-55-PRESS. With Susan Rice's comments saying that we have, quote, a long slog ahead, end quote, against ISIS. Are the American people really up for another, quote, long slog in a situation like this? Are we even paying the proper amount of attention to this situation?
Yeah, I don't think that Americans are paying quite enough attention to what's happening in Syria and Iraq.
That's a good point.
I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of people feel the United States has been there. The United States has paid the price, both in money and thousands of lives lost in Iraq. That didn't work. And withdrawal led to the current situation we see now.
I can't think of a better campaign slogan right now for a 2016 presidential candidate, whether on the Republican or Democratic side, than, yes, let's form the committee to re-invade Iraq. And while we're at it, let's invade Syria a little bit, too.
Right.
And that's what you did see a little bit of that over the last when you saw Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio get tripped up about this interesting hypothetical, if we knew then what we know now, that is that Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction, would you have invaded? I think it's a silly question. I don't know if you think it's a silly question, but presidents don't get to know things in the future when they're making ongoing decisions.
Sure, but essentially the question, which may be phrased in a silly way, because you and I are journalists, we're very much aware of how people in our profession are accustomed to asking silly questions, or at least questions phrased in silly ways, is basically asking, have you learned the lesson of the past 10 years? Which I think is an important question, especially if you're running for the highest office in the land.
I mean, I think the more pertinent question is, look, if you're president today, if you're in the White House today, what do you do about this mess that you've inherited? Well, not what would you have done in 2001 or 2002 or 2003 with the knowledge of 2015?
Well, a question that is connected to the if you had knowledge back then that we know today is, well, okay, so would you send troops back to Iraq, which has been asked of certain candidates, which
Rubio made an interesting point about this. He said, look, if I knew then what I knew now, I would not have put a bet on Manny Pacquiao to win that fight, right?
Yeah.
And so there you have it. We're going to take a short break. I'm Tim Mack with the Daily Beast, here with Aswin Soup saying, also of the Daily Beast. We'll be back in a moment.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You've walked through.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts, but what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
What an endorsement. I'm Tim Mack with The Daily Beast. I'm here with Aspen Soup saying, also The Daily Beast. And it happens that we're being joined right now by Washington editor for The Nation, George Zornick. George, thanks for coming on.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so we wanted to hear more about this trade deal that's making its way through Congress, and the White House has weighed in on this as well. Can you walk us through the basics of what we're looking at? I mean, what does this mean for Americans who at home might not have been following the details of the bill very closely?
Yeah, so what's happening now is that the Senate passed a procedural vote yesterday to close debate on Fast Track Authority. And this all gets pretty confusing because Fast Track Authority, which is known as TPA, or Trade Promotion Authority, gets all jumbled up with TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the big trade deal. What's really kind of being hotly contested now, and what Elizabeth Warren and the White House have been going at it over, is this Fast Track Authority, which says for the next 3 years, and really realistically for the next 6 years, because it can be automatically renewed after 3, that if Fast Track Authority is passed, that any trade deal that any president sends, whether it's Obama or his successor or even that person's successor if they are a one-term president, any trade deal they send to Congress cannot be amended and is not subject to a filibuster in the Senate. So this is a pretty big deal. I mean, this is it's not just about TPP, which we can talk about, but there's a huge European trade deal coming down the pike. And actually, Orrin Hatch said that there's 43 different trade deals, just some of them bilateral, small trade deals, that could come up under this 6-year Fast Track Authority.
Well, over this trade deal, there's been a good amount written about and how the media sort of like to brand this as sort of the democratic civil war over trade. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and if the drama how intense has the drama been in terms of, like, as you put it, Senator Warren and the Obama White House sort of going at it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The White House likes to kind of paint it as an Obama versus Warren dispute, and Elizabeth Warren certainly is the most visible sort of opponent of the trade deal. But really what it is Obama versus almost the entirety of the Democratic caucus in Congress. you had in that. Go ahead.
Well, how did Obama arrive to this conclusion? It's strange. I mean, not long ago, Senator Obama was seen as the progressive hope for the party, and very much took the role that Elizabeth Warren today is holding.
Yeah, it's interesting, and he's using that sort of authority and his image as that sort of progressive leader to appeal to base Democrats. To say, he gave a speech to Organizing for America that was basically like, look, you guys know me. I passed healthcare reform and a stimulus and Dodd-Frank and all this stuff. There's no way that I'm out here kind of pushing that I'm going to, sign on to this corporate-friendly trade deal. Don't listen to Elizabeth Warren. But it's just kind of crazy because the only other people out there who are really kind of gung-ho for it are John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, who's been a huge proponent of it. Mm-hmm. So when he's making that appeal, it's sort of interesting because people have to, if they believe that, they have to also believe that all of those guys have sort of come and seen the light and are doing this great thing for American jobs after 6.5 years of kind of blocking progress on that front. So it's an interesting appeal to authority, but you're absolutely right. He would have, I have a strong sense based on what he said in the Senate, what he said when he was campaigning for president, that if Barack Obama was in the Senate right now, if he was Senator Obama, he would be right there with Elizabeth Warren voting against the trade deal.
Well, by your educated estimation on this, what do you think the chances are of President Obama and the Obama administration getting its way on this?
It's going to be really, really interesting. I mean, the Senate, it will go through the Senate. There's been a lot of drama this week, but it was always sort of assumed that the Senate would pass it. There were 7 Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee who voted fast-track authority out of committee. So right then, 7 plus all the Republicans, you had 60. There will be some Republican defections, a small handful, but it'll go through the Senate. The House is just going to be really, really interesting. It looks like there could be as little as 10, 12 Democrats who are going to back it, which means you're going to need, well, first of all, that's not even going to be enough, but it's going to come down to how many Republicans will go along. And it's an interesting thing for them because the Chamber of Commerce really wants it, business really wants it. So, we know Republicans tend to be influenced by that, but this is also something that gives Obama sort of all of this power to push the trade deal through Congress. And giving Obama power is not something that at least a substantial segment of House Republicans like to do. So they're pretty wishy-washy on it. It's going to come down to, it's going to be an open, they're going to have to hold this vote open, and it's going to come down to, I think.
George, I just want to ask one last question. We've got about a minute left. And I don't want to get too bogged down in the process, but I do think that the process is very important in this particular instance, in that we've talked to a lot of members of Congress who have come in studio and said, we can go and see this deal, but we can't go in with notes, with staffers, with phones, with any way to take any knowledge out of it, right? What's the precedent for something like that?
It's actually more secret than some of, so the restrictions that you're talking about, which are true on members of Congress looking at it, is more strict than if someone wanted to go in and read some of the negotiating documents on the negotiations with Iran before that became official. I mean, then some things that the CIA showed the Intel Committee. It's really, really, really tight-lipped. And it's kind of crazy. A lot of senators have been protesting because they're not used to having, their notes confiscated. That's not something that members of Congress enjoy, having happen.
George, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. We're going to be back after a short break.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
Crimadvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
Crime Advisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada! What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry. Hungry for guns.
I understand that crimeadvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow, crimeadvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
crimeadvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Good morning. It's 57 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with the Daily Beast, here with my sidekick, Aswin Soupsang.
How sweet of you.
We're in for Bill Press, who's off for the week. And now I'm going to Peter.
There's a big award ceremony going on here in D.C. tonight. It's the Lincoln Awards. It recognizes people who aid military veterans and their families. And they had this idea they were going to kick off the whole show with a quick thing from someone who has helped military veterans and their families a lot. It was Brian Williams. And then they said, whoops, we need someone else. So they announced yesterday they have someone. It's going to be Michelle Obama. She's taped an introduction.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So yeah, right? That's
a
kind
good
of a step
substitute.
up from Brian Williams. So Brian Williams is out. Michelle Obama is in there for the Lincoln Awards.
Why? What did Brian Williams do?
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment.
All 1
you could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governor should come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we've took 4 pay cuts, and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in, so If I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or whatever. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning. It's 6 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with the Daily Beast, with my sidekick, Aswin Soupsang.
Stop calling
also
me that.
of the Daily Beast. Yeah. We're in for Bill Press.
I'm told I'm not allowed to
off.
swear on air, but you're really making me mad right now.
That feels genuine. That actually feels genuine. Boy, oh boy.
I've only got another 30 minutes or so to call him my sidekick, so we're gonna keep going with that.
Go to the host.
I think that's what he's gonna call me, something worse than
my
sidekick.
intern Timothy Carson
with my errand boy Tim Mack joining us.
Yes.
We've got a great show for you this hour, as we do every hour. But first, we're gonna go to Peter Ogburn.
This is the.
I know. It was a tight turnaround. I got news. I got stories. I got things for you. This is a scary story. Reality TV star Josh Duggar of the show 19 Kids and Counting. We all know the Duggars. They're the family that had a ton of kids and became famous for it. Congratulations. They also became politically active here in recent years. Well, Josh Duggar was accused of child molestation, and yesterday he actually admitted it. He said, quote, "I acted inexcusably." I didn't realize this, but Josh Duggar was on was with Family Research Council. He resigned from them yesterday. He said, he put out a statement, quote, 12 years ago, as a young teenager, he was 14 years old, by the way. 12 years ago, as a young teenager, I acted inexcusably, for which I am extremely sorry and deeply regret. I hurt others, including my family and close friends. A terrible, terrible story. They believe that some of the children that were molested were family members as well. So I hate that story, but it is the news. And there are a lot of things that you can say about the Duggar family, but I think the only thing I'll say right now is I feel terrible for the victim.
Absolutely. And Josh Duggar, he was executive director of Family Research Council Action. Like, this wasn't a small thing. He didn't attend a couple of meetings. Like, as you said, the family was rather politically active in social conservative politics. Family Research Council for the uninitiated, the blissfully unaware. That is Tony Perkins' joint, who you might know from Gay Marriage is Bad fame.
That guy
will destroy
He's
America.
been riding that train for a long, long time.
So it's interesting for the arbiters of Christian morality in this country, or the self-proclaimed arbiters, to have this man resign due to sexual abuse allegations.
Yeah, terrible story. Continuing on that theme, the domestic violence charges against Ray Rice were dismissed yesterday afternoon in Atlantic City. An Atlantic City judge said that Ray Rice has completed his pre-trial intervention program. They wanted him to go to get help. They wanted him to go get treatment. He did so. He completed it, and apparently he did very well. Yesterday they presented him with a dismissal order, which means he has completed all of his terms and conditions, and therefore they will be dismissing the case.
A tiny fraction of the people who face the kind of charges he faced end up with the slap on the wrist that he got.
Yeah,
I think
is a slap on the wrist.
It's like 1%.
Yeah, that is absolutely a slap on the wrist.
It's really sad.
Yeah. And we go to Kentucky, Glencoe, Kentucky, where whatever you might think, the story is definitely not funny. A couple it's a little funny. This couple couldn't contain themselves to make it home and go and have sexual congress at home, so they did it in their car, their running car. They then passed out with the car running, and they are no longer with us. They passed away.
I don't know.
They passed away.
That doesn't sound
it's
like
not funny.
With that, we've got Ben Jacobs on the line.
Let's just kill it.
He's a political reporter for The Guardian.
We're done.
Ben, have you ever found yourself in that kind of situation?
Tim, that's the type of situation I normally leave to Swen. That's
Okay. I actually do feel bad about laughing for these past minute and a half because I was not aware of this story. I did not know that's where it was going.
And you could see yourself in that kind of situation.
Two people are dead here. Come on, let's pour one out for them.
But it's funny.
It is. It's not so much funny as it is. What are these? How you call the Darwin Award situations?
Yes,
right?
yes, it's a
If you're
Darwin
going to have sex with someone in a car, first of all, turn the car off. And if you're going to pass out after having sex in a running car, maybe turn the car. Just, turn the car off.
Wait, so what happened? Did the car crash? Or was
No,
it was running the
they were
fumes.
poisoned
So
by
it was in a garage.
Well, there was a hole in the exhaust pipe. It leaked into the car.
Okay, so this is definitely Darwin Award.
I mean, what a way to go out, right? Like, if you're going to go out, you have your sex, and then you fall asleep, and then you just don't wake up again. I'm not saying I want to go out that way. Hey, Ben, what's happening?
Yeah.
I'm just feel like I'm a bystander at what is one of these more illuminating radio conversations I've ever heard.
Well, Ben, we really wanted to get you on the show to talk not about this topic, although,
I did, however.
I wasn't sure about your expertise on the matter, but we do know that you're a Baltimore native. We do know that you've been following the Freddie Gray issue really closely. When Swin and I were up in Baltimore covering the riots there, we saw you there. What's going on? What's the latest on charges?
I mean, the latest is that the state's attorney, which is what they call the district attorney in Baltimore, announced the indictment of all 6 officers yesterday, that the charges varied ever so slightly from what she initially announced, that for the 3 officers facing the toughest charges, they're getting 5 years more. The 3 facing the least severe are getting 5 years less. But they're going ahead with a trial of these officers, and the most severe charge is against the driver of the van for depraved heart indifference, second-degree murder, which meant that he acted with such malice and depravity that he should have known something was going on in a way that went far beyond negligence, and that he just didn't care.
And how is this being taken in Baltimore, from what you can tell, on the street and from people who have been in the past very passionate about this issue?
Well, that there's first of all, I think people on the street, there's general sense that the indictment happened, and that certainly Marilyn Mosby impressed folks nationally by making the indictment. But I think there's still a lot of questions about what happened, what's going on. What's been missed in Baltimore is that during the worst of the turbulence or riots or whatever you'd like to call it, no one died. Since then, Baltimore's murder rates are at levels that we haven't seen for decades, that Baltimore's been averaging a murder a day since then, and at violence levels last seen in the 90s over the past month, and that there's a lot of concern and a lot of worry over that and what that means and what's going on as a result.
Benjamin, can you please talk to us a little bit about why, in terms of the spiking murder rate? I mean, a couple of Tim and my colleagues at the Daily Beast wrote an article yesterday about how murders in one part of the town are up 200% and shootings are up 800%, but arrests have fallen. Police are locking up fewer people. Can you weigh in on that a little bit, please?
Something I've heard talking to someone, that the big issue is that it's really fallen apart on sort of broader crime prevention efforts, that the aftermath of Freddie Gray, particularly the riots, that the operation where you're bringing in, what's called Safe Ground, bringing in community members and people involved in crime to talk and try to work on some of these issues so that they don't result, is totally fallen apart. And that it's built up a new level of distrust between police and community community, and that's really led to a lot of this jumping off. There's also speculation about whether the police are slowing down, which is something that seems to be as much concern based on the data and concern based on what actually happened in New York after Eric Gardner as fact so far.
Are you suggesting then that the police might be kind of slow walking it a little bit, or being a little bit less aggressive in their law enforcement activities?
Well, that's been suggested, and it's sort of hard to measure and say about whether police are being a little bit more cautious. But I think a lot of it is because so much of what's happened in Baltimore is based off of efforts of community policing and trust in the community, and that if you don't have relationships between, say, police and gang members, communities and gang members, community and the police anymore the way you had 6 weeks ago, that creates a lot of distrust, and that you also have a big outlet for a lot of the discontent that still hasn't been addressed in the city coming out.
Hey, so one of the things that I, have been pretty interested by is in all this coverage of Baltimore is how all these reporters showed up and were like, "Oh wow, look at Baltimore! Wow, it's a real mess here. You look at all these boarded up houses, and you look at all the blight in Baltimore. If nothing else, what's the future of that situation in Baltimore now that it's getting a little more attention? Is that going to change? Is that going to correct itself at all?"
I think it's been in the process of correcting itself. That I think Baltimore, certainly the blight in Baltimore where it's at its worst, is really in a terrible, terrible situation when you look at some of the neighborhoods, particularly in West Baltimore where Freddie Gray was. But first of all, if reporters want to see blight, they don't even have to go that far to Washington, D.C., where a lot of them were coming from. And secondly, Baltimore is a city that economically is fundamentally, it's rather unequal how the development's been happening, which I think is a lot of concern. But it's a city that's in relatively good shape. And a lot of the issues and a lot of discontent talking to people is that they're seeing this a certain level of uneven distribution as you're having large levels of gentrification, after you're having significant areas of the city being restored, and that hasn't come to West Baltimore in ways that you haven't seen this sort of situation, this sort of contrast in, say, Detroit, not to pick on Detroit as an example, where there actually hasn't been that level of improvement, and that if Baltimore in some ways, a lot of this discontent, a lot of these issues were spurred by the fact that the city was getting better, but it was based off the fact that policing people in the African-American community felt was disproportionately targeted towards them, and they weren't seeing any of the benefits.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the development or lack thereof in West Baltimore. I mean, I remember when Tim and I returned to Baltimore the next day in the bright light of day after the night of really bad rioting on that Monday, that while driving through that part of Baltimore, I mean, maybe this is because I'm not a native, but I genuinely had a hard time figuring out too often what was destroyed by the violence and rioting the previous night and what was just West Baltimore. So can you talk a little bit about, as you were saying, like how that part of Baltimore has not seen the improvements that have come over the past few years?
Well, it's not seen the improvement that's happened over the past,
well, more than a few years, yes.
More than a few years. I mean, look, I think something you realize is that I was driving around that night at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm having issues finding what was burned out, 3 hours before and what was burned out in 1968. It's an area that Santon Winchester, the neighborhood where Freddie Gray was, actually saw a concerted effort at urban renewal in the early 90s that fell apart because it was a little bit disconnected from everything else. That you have an area where Baltimore is a city built for 1 million people and has 600,000 people, and the population diminishing. That one of the things I'm sure you noticed in Baltimore was that they, have a lot of empty lots where they bulldoze vacant houses, which was a project they tried in the 90s. And it turned out that if you bulldoze vacant houses, you just have overgrown lots and, drug junkies hanging out there in ways that you didn't necessarily have with the vacant houses.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ben, thanks so much for coming on to the show. Really appreciate your thoughts as a Baltimore native on this whole issue. And we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. We are 24 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with my sidekick, Gaswin Soupsang. We are stepping in for Bill Press, who's off this
You're making
week.
me Robin now. That's great.
I've always thought you look good in tights.
We're like halfway through the show.
I'm not gonna
guys.
argue with that.
We're halfway through the show. You're doing a great job.
All right, there we go. And Swin's got a great story for us to discuss as we go through the make our way down to the bottom of the hour.
Well, I think frivolous is a little bit more of an accurate description than great. But as some of your listeners and viewers might know, President Obama got a new Twitter account this week, @POTUS, standing for President of the United States. And after coming onto Twitter as @POTUS, he broke the world record for fastest to 1 million Twitter followers, surpassing Robert Downey Jr.'s, also known as Iron Man's record. And for your listeners and viewers who care, Robert Downey Jr.'s publicist did not respond to my request for comment regarding him being bested by President Obama, who I believe he is a supporter of. He's been to events and fundraisers for, I believe, the 2012 Obama campaign. But the thing that interested me about this is that the New York Times yesterday put up a story regarding, with the headline, Obama's Twitter debut, POTUS, attracts hate-filled posts. And to quote the story, it only took a few minutes for Mr. Obama's account to attract racist, hate-filled posts and replies. They addressed him with racial slurs and called him a monkey. I'm shocked and appalled and very surprised that there's racism on the internet.
Wow, guys. I mean, who would have thunk?
Like, apparently, there's racism on Twitter. Should we check Reddit? Like,
where else could there possibly be racism online?
Is there racism on YouTube?
Couldn't be, right?
I mean,
I can't even imagine it.
Jesus, it's a fun story about a highly visible, influential, powerful black man being on the internet.
It's also
yes,
the most powerful man in the free world gets on Twitter and within a day gets called a monkey.
Well, not within a day, probably within 45 seconds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Like, immediately gets called racial slurs. That is horrifying. I would expect it, though. I would absolutely expect that. I'm not shocked by that at all.
Horrifying but typical is the nature of this story.
Sure. I don't know that it's a great idea for him to be on Twitter. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
I'm not sure I believe it's him on Twitter.
I don't think it's him.
He says it's him. He says it's his personal account. Hey, it's Barack, etc., etc. Do we believe it? He's not even allowed to have very much access to the internet, as far as we understand.
No, it's the Illuminati tweeting is what's happening. It's not him.
Did we get that verified? Did we get the
He got
Twitter
verified.
account?
Yeah, he's verified, right?
Are we sure?
I think he's verified. I'm almost positive.
Checking right now.
Let's hope, because otherwise we've all been had.
Yep,
yeah,
verified.
We've all been had.
It's just @POTUS, POTUS.
I love that acronym. I mean, I've heard. Do you remember when you first heard that acronym? I heard it was in the opening episode of The West Wing.
That's the first time I heard it. Yes,
Is that right?
Aaron Sorkin taught me what POTUS meant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, one of the characters gets paged by a POTUS
while he's getting out of bed with someone who turns out to be a call girl.
What a great show that was.
Yeah, no, it's ahead of, or it's a lot of people these days. It was before their time, but yeah, what a great show.
What a shame. I mean, we had West Wing then, and now we have House of Cards, which is a lot more pessimistic.
What a step down.
Anyways, we will be back shortly. Thanks for listening and staying with us on the Bill Press Show. Back in a second.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
Eye cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, welcome back to The Bill Press Show. It's 33 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with my aide-de-camp. That's when Soup sang.
Thank you, Tim.
We're both at the Daily Beast, and we're here with the roving reporter for Bloomberg Politics, Dave Weigel. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, so we're going to chat a little bit about what's happening today, and I think there's a lot of anticipation that today or soon that Hillary Clinton's Benghazi emails are going to be coming out. What are you hearing about that, and what effect might that have on her campaign in the coming months?
Well, I don't really cover Hillary Clinton.
Well, I mean, on the 2016
Good answer.
beat. On the 2016 beat, I was just hoping to get your thoughts on how that might affect the campaign.
Well, I think Democrats underestimate how much people are concerned about Benghazi. They've told themselves, and I feel like people like David Brock, the Democratic infrastructure that the Clintons built, frankly, have convinced themselves that people are just going to write this off as crazy. I don't think that's true. I do think Hillary has a problem with voters not being able to name much of what she did at the State Department apart from the scandal, apart from the deaths of these four people. And she, if you observe her, again, as somebody who doesn't cover her as much as I cover the Republicans, she tends to overreact and overprepare when she thinks she's being treated unfairly. So this is an issue that rankles her. I think it's going to damage her in two ways. One, that people really do care more about this than Democrats like to think. Two, that she feels personally put out when she has to answer questions about it.
Another thing that's happening in Congress is, as you were writing about earlier this week, what Rand Paul did with his long speech, close to 11 hours, talking about the Patriot Act. He was pushing up against it. What did he accomplish, Dave? He
very slightly delayed the cloture on the Patriot Act, which is less than what he I think, implied to his donors he could do. I mean, I was watching Rand Paul physically in the Senate. I was also watching my email, watching web ads. Remember when I was just going to YouTube to check if Paul had used a line before in another speech? YouTube ads for everything I was searching, Google ads, I should say, were all for the Rand Paul filibuster. So I'm not trying to be cynical here. This was in large part about his campaign to build a superstructure outside the Republican Party while competing for the nomination. It was to a smaller extent about delaying the Patriot Act a little bit. I mean, but I think he's sincere when he says that the only way to slow down or defeat the bill is to make it infamous. That hasn't really happened with Patriot, because with Patriot you can get people saying that we're going to all die if we don't reaffirm or reapprove the act. It's happened with things like SOPA and PIPA and pieces of legislation that can become infamous and tough to defend back home. He's trying
Did he make any actual progress against this, or is this a lot of grandstanding?
I think he made a bit more progress against renewing Section 215 the way it stands. Now, the problem, I mean, he actually kind of brought out an argument between civil libertarians, between himself and people like the ACLU, because he kept insisting that Section 215 was going to be mangled by the USA Freedom Act, and without getting too into the weeds, that the reform bill that the ACLU likes is as bad as doing nothing at all. So there's a disagreement. They think there would still be a victory if there is a vote on the USA Freedom Act that succeeds. He doesn't. If he can make that infamous so that they can't keep Section 215, which is the part that allows bulk collection of data, then that'll be a victory. If not, then it'll just be a PR victory.
Yeah, I mean, and what's his standing right now amongst the field? I mean, there was a lot more talk of him, I think, even just a few months ago. He's managed to recapture some of the spotlight this week, but it does seem that he's been passing in and out of conversation.
Yeah, well, when I talk to him about that, I'll ask specifically, do you think that you, referring to Senator Paul now, missed your moment, or do you think that you failed to come out with something compelling to say about Baltimore? And he resents the question, but he answers it and says it's just there are people with too much time on their hands who focus too much on what he says, but he indeed should have said more about Baltimore. I think he realized from his sort of quick, glib response to the Baltimore riots, which I think came out of overabundance of caution, because he felt like he got over his skis on Ferguson, that he doesn't really hurt himself at all if he jumps into the fray on these things. I think you're going to see him be more active and more open and more talkative about the issues he has worked on, and he has probably gotten involved in more cross-partisan issues than anyone else in the Senate, much less anyone else running for president.
Well, when you talk about his glib response to Baltimore, are you referring to his suggestion or just flat-out statement that stuff like this is happening because of single mothers, or...
No, I was the part that he apologizes for, or not apologizes, thinks that he handled poorly, was he was on Laura Ingram's radio show and said, "Oh, yeah, I was on the train last night, and I'm glad I didn't stop in Baltimore." And this is a guy who's talked about how he will walk into urban communities that Republicans have given up on and never talked to. And I think he does regret that he made it look like he didn't care about Baltimore. I mean, when I asked him about this a week and a half ago, he was saying, I've done more on criminal justice than anyone else in the Senate, and they can't just undo that because of a couple of words I said. So that was the part. The part about the breakdown of the family, he still believes in and says consistently.
Well, in terms of Rand Paul certainly has been trying to stake out a place for himself in the Republican field for 2016 regarding criminal justice and racial. Can you talk a little bit more about what he's done on that and what sort of legislation he's been proposing?
Well, he has a series of bills, all of them co-sponsored with a Democrat, one with Harry Reid, that would roll back some of the criminal penalties that have built up since the war on drugs really started. So he's got reducing the sentencing disparity for some drugs, giving states more flexibility not to arrest people for possessing marijuana. He's got some kind of more sentencing reform bills. He basically, I think the Paul conception of justice through all these bills is that you should be able to make a nonviolent mistake and get back on the streets, get voting, get a job sooner than we allow it now. That's the problem. When he talks about the breakdown of the family, he's not lecturing. He doesn't want to be lecturing people. He's saying it's not all their fault. It's that there will be a family broken for decades because their dad got caught with marijuana and went to jail for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or when civil forfeiture is another part of his agenda. There are families ruined because they have maybe $3,000 to their name, I mean, he talked about this in Philadelphia this week. Maybe $2,000, $3,000 a name, and the cops take half of that because they're working on a drug bust. I mean, all this kind of grows out of the idea that the war on drugs led to overcriminalization. So he wants to unwind as much of that as possible. He's not getting a lot of it. I mean, this is the thing about his presidential campaign. He's not getting a lot of that done in the Senate now, even in Republican leadership. But if he makes it infamous, he thinks he gets it through.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for joining us here on the Bill Press Show. Really appreciate your insight here. That's Dave Weigel, the roving reporter for Bloomberg Politics. We'll be back in just a minute.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000. I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is the Bill Press Show.
Good morning. It's 45 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack of the Daily Beast here with my intern, Aswin Soupsang.
I'm going to
also
you.
the Daily Beast.
I'm going to rip open your throat.
We got a great staff here backing us up. We got Peter Ogborn.
Hey, guys. Doing a great job.
He's the executive producer of the Bill Press Show and helping run it while Bill is off in Cuba.
I'm Bill's sidekick.
Bill's sidekick.
Today I'm your sidekick.
We got Lisa Murphy.
Hey,
She's
good
running
morning.
the board.
Good guys here.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
We got Jamie Benson screening the calls and Monty Kanzler operating the video.
You got it.
Good morning to everyone.
Thanks for being here, guys.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Benghazi emails that are related to Hillary Clinton. You know, Hillary Clinton had this private email server that she was conducting business on when she was Secretary of State. Soon, either today or in the coming days, the State Department will release its first tranche of Hillary Clinton emails. It will be super interesting. She had this to say in Iowa this week.
I have said repeatedly, I want those emails out. Nobody has a bigger interest in getting them released than I do.
We're talking about 850 pages worth of email correspondence that are going to come out in the coming days. Republicans in Congress have had access to these emails for some time, and what they're trying to do is figure out if it might shed some light on our understanding of how Clinton viewed these attacks as they were happening in 2012. Remember, 4 Americans died during that attack in Libya, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya. Peter?
Oh, I don't really cover Hillary Clinton. Sorry.
A little bit of in-humor.
Sorry, I
for
couldn't
the
resist. No, look, I
morning
think,
commute.
I think that this is a real issue for Hillary, right? I think that she has to be a little more open and transparent about this email situation. It's a problem. It's a real problem. And I say this as someone who works on the Bill Press Show. Bill has said it too. I realize a lot of the other candidates have email issues of their own. Scott Walker has his own email scandal, which is out there. Mm-hmm. If you're Hillary Clinton and you're Secretary of State and you've got emails that just poof, go away, that's weird. I'm sorry. I know that there are people that disagree with that, but that's weird.
Yeah, it is super strange. I mean, and the way that she set up the whole situation is that she went out of her way to create a private email server outside of official emails at the State Department. It's hard not to see this as a real and actual thought-out attempt to avoid public scrutiny of her communication.
And we hear from people all the time. And by the way, our number is 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377, because we have this conversation about whether or not it's a real scandal or a real issue. And I think it is. I think it's worthy of attention. I think it's worth talking about. And I think it's worth... and I know that things have changed moving forward, by the way, right? Like, you can't have this anymore. You can't have your own server running out of your house while you are serving at the pleasure of the president. You just can't do that anymore.
Sure, and
which seems to be a little late to the game. Like, that should have been something that maybe should have been established a while back.
I mean, if you ask me from a position of like cold political calculation, I would not say this is anything that is going to sink or perhaps even harshly dent the Clinton 2016 campaign. But yes, of course, I do agree that more and greater transparency is preferable to less of it.
I'm pro that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. 866-55-PRESS is our
Yeah, okay, but here's the thing. It won't sink her presidential campaign, but it does follow a long-standing narrative that the Clintons are insular, that they're not transparent, they don't want to be forthcoming with people.
You can't
they don't
trust
like the press.
Clintons.
Right. This is really an issue of whether or not this is a much deeper issue of trust. And over time that's gonna dig away at it. We're gonna see this story is gonna come up over and over and over again over the upcoming year. You're not gonna stop hearing about it because there are gonna be emails after emails released slowly over time through 2016. Believe that.
Let me ask you guys a question. Tim, this is more aimed towards you because you're on this on the reporter beat day after day after day, right? Because I know you don't cover Hillary Clinton.
I cover Benghazi a little bit,
but this idea of Hillary Clinton and her relationship with the media, and the media getting upset about her not answering questions and not making herself available, you combine that with all of the other things. Could any of that catch up to her in a presidential race?
I mean, I wonder. I mean, a lot of people didn't trust Bill Clinton and still thought that he was a good presidential candidate and a good president in the White House. There are a lot of voters who didn't think that he was the most trustworthy candidate, but voted for him anyways. And I can see that happening with Hillary Clinton. I mean, the issue of trust isn't the be-all and end-all calculus when people go to the polls and say, I'm going to cast a vote for this person to enter the White House. Certainly it's overcomable. The situation really is whether voters want to make that kind of trade-off between Hillary Clinton and whoever else might be on the ballot. And of course, we're presuming she wins the nomination.
Yes, of course. And where are we if we can't trust our politicians in this day and age? I mean,
that's the interesting thing, and I think over the coming days, whether it's today or sometime over the weekend or even early next week, when we see some of these emails, we'll get new insight as to the way she communicates with her staff, the way they viewed Benghazi. Should be interesting. The New York Times had a little bit about this. They obtained about a third in advance. We've got a caller in that we can bring in. We got Tim from White Plains.
What's up, Tim?
Good morning. Am I on?
Yeah,
yes,
you're on, man.
on.
What's your take?
Hey, how you doing this morning? All right. I'm just wondering why we have, 18 clowns going for the Republican Party right now. We're going to let them bring up Benghazi again. We got far bigger problems with, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We got Obama and the Republicans, mostly Republicans, putting that through the Senate, and we're going to bring up Benghazi again. I just don't understand. I don't understand why this is such a big deal when we have other issues.
So you don't think that this is a relevant or important issue to raise on the Democratic side?
No, absolutely not. I think we shouldn't. It seems to be the Republicans doing all the criticizing about Benghazi. It's a Republican issue, but their candidates are a bunch of clowns. And why do we even care? Why do we even care what they think? We have other big issues, like we need to get minimum wage raised. We need to take care of inequality. We need to take care of the environment and the likelihood of, global warming. We have far bigger issues right now than worrying about Benghazi.
All the 2016 Republican candidates are clowns. That's such a mean thing to say about George Pataki. I mean, but he does. There is an interesting point in there that while we're here talking about transparency with regards to Hillary Clinton's emails, which is I think maybe not the most important issue, but it is a relevant important issue. Republicans are essentially using this as a way, yes, to bring up Benghazi over and over again, which is the congressional Republicans' stance and approach to things. But,
Well, hey, thanks for listening to the Bill Press Show. We're going to be back in just a minute. I'm Tim Mack with the Daily Beast with Aswin Supsang, also the Beast.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves, Would you like it back? What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, welcome back to the Bill Press Show. It's 57 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with my intern Swin Soup saying, we're both at the Daily Beast. Swin, how are you?
I've never felt better in my life, sir. Good to see you, Timothy.
Lieutenant Mack here.
I'm thrilled we finally were able to work this out of you guys hosting the show. We've had you both on as guests. We've had you both in at the same time.
I can see that this is the start of a beautiful relationship.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. Right? No, you'll never be invited back again. Are you kidding me? This is the last airing of the Bill Press Show, period.
We've destroyed it. Look, time to move on.
We've behaved ourselves.
You behaved?
You told us not to hurl racial epithets on the air.
And you only did one.
Look, we've got a great hour left. We've got Olivia Nuzzi, political reporter for the Daily Beast. She's going to be joining us shortly. We're going to have the guitarist for Good Charlotte coming on, talking about Awesome Con, comic books. We're going to be chatting about that soon. Back in a minute.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What they told us we were doing was going to rid the state of frivolous lawsuits. So we said, okay, let's vote for this.
Leading up to the 2003 effort in Texas, the insurance companies primarily, but also the medical industry, started this drumbeat. They were alleging that medical malpractice lawsuits were soaring and the cost of healthcare was going way up. They barraged the citizens of Texas with these frightening, scary messages that we were in some sort of crisis. But the reality was that simply wasn't true.
One of the things I think the public doesn't fully understand is that lawsuits are about a lot more than just seeking compensation for an individual plaintiff. By giving damages to the individual, the jury is sending a message about safety to the doctors, the nurses, the hospital. Please change your ways. Make healthcare safer to protect all of us.
Bill and Kelly Putnam experienced a nightmare scenario. They're in the nursing home with their father. The nurse administers medication improperly. As a result, he started to choke on the medication, and Kelly was forced to provide CPR on her father while staff at the nursing home did nothing.
I was probably 6 inches away from my dad's eyes. He's no longer thrashing, he's no longer moving.
And so they took him to the hospital, they worked on him, cause of death, aspiration. Texas Board of Nursing ruled that the nurse not only did what we said she did, but she also said that the facility had her destroy the medical records for that day and create a new version. I decided to give a lawyer friend a call. I went through probably 10, maybe more. All of them I got the same letter back stating that because of tort reform, we cannot afford to litigate these types of cases.
What the 2003 restrictions did was make it economically unfeasible for most attorneys to take most medical malpractice cases. It's a cynical attempt to make it harder for people to go to court by making it harder for them to get representation.
I do remember when Patricia Whitman first contacted me, because as a cardiologist, I was pretty outraged when I looked at the medical records.
Patricia Whitman visited the emergency room complaining of chest pains. They look at her EKG. Doctor says, no, you've got indigestion, go home. The symptoms persist. Next day she goes in, sees a different physician. She's been having a heart attack.
Anyone looking at the EKG in a patient with chest pain has to consider that that patient is having an acute heart attack until proven otherwise. All of these abnormalities were essentially ignored, and a diagnosis of acid reflux was made in Patricia Whitman's case, and that was the wrong diagnosis.
The doctor came in and he said that I had substantial permanent heart damage and that I was, quote unquote, 100% disabled. Prior to the heart attack, I had a 3,500 square foot home that I took care of, and I was on my feet 8 hours a day going to cosmetology school. Then I would come home and cook for my kids and do whatever else needed to be done. I did it all. After the heart attack, I couldn't keep up with the house. I couldn't pay the mortgage. My life has changed a lot. I will never be able to do what I used to do. I have to depend on 5 heart medications that I have to take every day in order to survive. This is a letter from one attorney. It would be difficult to prove that the ER physician's conduct rose to the level of gross negligence. No attorney would take my case.
Tort reform involved a specific passage of language that said that a simple negligence standard no longer applied to emergency room care in Texas. The new standard was a gross negligence standard called willful and wanton negligence.
You have to prove in court that that doctor saw me walk through the door and said, that's my next victim. And of course that doesn't happen. And so people like Patricia Whitman, who find themselves in the emergency room and are misdiagnosed or harmed, face almost no ability for accountability. If you look back and you break down the arguments made by the insurance companies and medical industry about the cost, quality, access of healthcare in Texas, by every metric, we're worse off today than we were 10 years ago. It has made life better and easier for a small group of corporate interests at the expense of the rest of us.
These corporations, they have no fear because they know that they're not going to be held responsible. It shouldn't be about money. But unfortunately, that's the only language these people speak. That's why we're out protesting.
We will stand out on the street in front of the facility with signs that state what happened and make sure that they understand that we're not going to go away and that what they did was wrong.
We must restore meaningful accountability in this state so that another family does not go through the same nightmare that they've been through. If enough people in the public say enough is enough, then politicians have to think twice. We're never going to be able to compete with the special interests in terms of campaign contributions and money. Where we have to compete with them is in boots on the ground. The more people that rise up and say, we want our rights back, then they have to think about it. And once we've made them think about it, then half the battle is won.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. It's 6 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, reporter for the Daily Beast, here with my intern, Aswin Subsang. He also works for the Daily Beast on a temporary part-time basis.
Aswin Subsang, deputy social media editor at the Daily Beast and part-time lover of my colleague Timothy Carson Mack. Thank you for joining us today.
We're on air, you know. Anyways, I'm here with Olivia Nuzzi. She is also a reporter with the Daily Beast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I regret this already.
Well, we've got another 15 minutes to fill.
We're gonna have to act civil with each other for the next 15 or 20 minutes. That we don't have the capacity for that.
And you know, this is our first ever Daily Beast takeover, I believe.
All Daily Beast takeover. Mm-hmm. Remember, no cursing. So Olivia, you've been writing a lot about Christie. He wants an apology. Why does he want an apology? What is this?
Yesterday he was on CNBC and he said that the media owed him an apology for focusing so much on Bridgegate instead of focusing on like Hillary Clinton or the IRS or other scandals that have conveniently nothing to do with him. And he just doesn't seem to quite understand why Bridgegate was important or why people might have had questions about the busiest bridge in the world being shut down inexplicably in his state. And so I wrote him an apology.
Well, tell me about this apology. I mean, it sounds profuse.
I'm very sorry. And I'm sorry on behalf of every other reporter that thought that Bridgegate was worth asking questions about. And I think he's right. I think we all need to take a moment of reflection and really think about, what we did to him. It was mean.
But Olivia, it was not as if he was out there on the bridge moving cones, right?
I mean, he wasn't found guilty by the U.S. Attorney Paul Fishman, but two top members of his administration were found guilty, who he hired or installed at the Port Authority.
Well, and by the way, I encourage everyone listening and watching right now to read Olivia's piece. It's very funny. Very smart, very good at thedailybeast.com. Headline, Dear Christie, sorry I did my job. I'm going to quote a little bit from it because I love you so much. I apologize on behalf of everyone in the media who did their job despite Christie's bullying tactics. That was wrong and we should all have been covering the Clinton email story instead. The one that wouldn't break for another year and a half.
Yeah, I stand by that statement.
Brave of you.
Thank you.
So I mean, you cover Christie as a beat. I mean, how does that play? I mean, he's always been very confrontational with the press. Mm-hmm. But where does he stand in the field right now? I mean, his star has certainly fallen. I mean, how far?
He's not polling well, but I did a piece last week where I sort of explored the fact that he has resurrected himself multiple times already throughout his political career. I mean, it's the one thing that really defines his political career is his ability to bounce back. So I think it's a mistake to discount him this early on. I think he's a much better retail politician than people give him credit for, and maybe the best in the field. So I don't think it's safe to say that he's dead yet.
So what does he do from here on in order to continue, or has he already begun this process of resurrection, and what does he need to do?
Well, his team, their strategy, as they articulated it to me, is to have him out doing town halls as much as possible to talk to people and to remind the media that he's very good at talking to people. He's doing them in New Jersey, he's doing them in New Hampshire, and I think he's just going to keep on doing that until people sort of remember that he's good at being a politician.
Well, what you said earlier, that he's a retail politician, and you say perhaps the best in the 2016 field. One of the criticisms or critiques of Chris Christie that we repeatedly hear out in the national punditry is that this stuff may fly in New Jersey. His tough-talking bully boy, or bullying.
Like bully boy.
Yeah. Tactics and image, but that's not going to play well nationally. That may not play so well in the South. Do you buy that?
I know his response to that is to say, well, if it doesn't work in Iowa or it doesn't work in South Carolina, then why do these states keep inviting me back to campaign for people here? You know, if it's so ineffective, why was I so effective as the Republican Governors Association chairman, fundraising all across the country? And I think he has a really good point there. He was immensely successful doing that.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really interested in is the way that other candidates might be eating up his space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's in voters, but especially in fundraisers.
Mm-hmm.
You've written a little bit about how Jeb is snatching up a couple key players. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, you have Jeb literally going into New Jersey and just like lobbying to get his supporters to follow him instead. People that have known Christie or have supported him for like 2 decades. One guy in particular, Joe Krillos, is the one who swore Christie into his first elected office in 1995, and he's now donating and supporting Jeb publicly. So I think, well, maybe the quantity of people that are actually going over from Christie to Jeb is not that great. It doesn't look great to have stories, even if it's about one person leaving his camp to support Jeb. And I think that kind of contributes to this narrative that he's out in the wilderness right now.
And it's kind of like a moral blow, too, more than maybe even a blow of substance in terms of money or support. Is there any sense that Christie might even be doubting himself, might be a little self-reflective, might be a little bit concerned?
Yeah, I mean, self-reflection does not appear to be his strong suit, just from covering him for a few years. But one member of his sort of close circle told me that there is a possibility that he won't run. And it's definitely not, no one really knows yet what he's going to do besides him and presumably his family.
Yeah. The thing is, the bluster is still there, as we saw this week with the demand for an apology. That swagger that he has, it hasn't faded.
I think that plays really well for him, and I think that the media attacking him, especially like MSNBC attacking him so relentlessly for so long, really helped him with the right wing. I mean, he went to CPAC during last year during Bridgegate, and when MSNBC was still attacking him, and I think it helped. It had Republicans feeling like they had to defend him against that, and I think that was a really good position for him to be in.
Right. There's almost nothing better for a conservative or Republican politician than getting to stand up to the mainstream left-wing media.
Totally. I mean, so being attacked on MSNBC all day, every day for a few weeks, I think that was great for him. So he should thank them rather than demand an apology.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has. Like, this is one of the major reasons he's even known outside of New Jersey is his confrontations with the press and with people in his town halls. I mean, this is a part of his brand that that elevated him and makes him who we know today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, is there anything more than that, though? I mean, is there any other reason why voters should look to Chris Christie? What are the positives that he might try to emphasize in a campaign other than the press doesn't like me, so you should like me?
I mean, right now that's his biggest struggle is that his state, all of his accomplishments in his state have pretty much collapsed in the last few months. I mean, pension reform was his major accomplishment in New Jersey. That might be just proven unconstitutional by the court. And without that, I mean, his state's economy is in shambles, unemployment is high, taxes are up, property taxes, which are already the highest in the nation in New Jersey, are up like 18% since he got into office. So I don't think he really has much to campaign on.
Well, let's say he does officially launch his presidential bid, and from covering him for so long, this probably isn't his strong suit, but if he runs, he's going to have to talk a lot, and he already has started to talk about foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Christie blueprint right now on a supposed, say, Chris Christie doctrine? Like, I know he wants expanded military. He said things regarding, not necessarily regarding foreign policy, but civil liberties and the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
You can't enjoy your civil liberties if you're in a coffin. And
that's true.
Yeah, that is true. That is a fact. There's a lot of
like
things.
if you're alive and someone put you in a coffin.
Well,
it'd be hard to.
Yeah, it'd be that'd be like indefinite detention. But he has laid out something of a hawkish foreign policy stance. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I mean, he is sort of the anti-Rand Paul wing of the party. He's for a robust national security mass data collection program. and he seems to have a sort of neocon foreign policy. I mean, previously, one of his only statements on foreign policy was to say Putin would not mess with him like Putin messes with Obama. There's not a lot of substance there, but I think he's trying to define that, and I think what's coming out is like a very sort of old school doctrine.
And he's, but in terms of his hawkish foreign policy positions, he hasn't been Lindsey Grahaming or John McCaining around being like, yes, we need more boots on the ground in Syria, or...
Not yet, but I don't think it's ridiculous to think that he might do that sometime soon, especially on the debate stage.
Let's switch topics a little bit. Talk about Rand Paul, who I know you love.
I love him.
Not just I mean, you cover him and you love him so much that you watched a lot of his filibuster this week and his speech on the Senate floor, close to 11 hours.
How was that?
It was riveting, I would say. There was a
what
lot
was he
going
wearing?
on. He was wearing a suit, and he was wearing initially leather Kolhan shoes, which he normally wears. But then he switched at some point. I missed it. He switched into gray sneakers. I don't know how he switched without me noticing it, but
because you have hawk eyes, were you watching via video feed, or were you in the chamber?
In the chamber.
You were in the chamber watching that.
So it was like hanging over the balcony, and he somehow switched his shoes without me noticing.
I mean, describe a little bit what it was like to be there. I mean, I know a lot of Rand people thought, a historic moment, et cetera,
Right.
but what did it feel like inside the chamber itself? Did it feel genuine? Did it feel real to you?
Well, the issue, I think the substance of the issue is very real, and I think he seems to really believe, or he's doing a very good job of pretending that he believes what he's saying on the issue. But actually being there, it felt like a child broke into the Capitol and during off hours and went in there and started giving a very long rambling speech that he was imagining himself as president. It just felt like someone playing lawmaker. It was very strange because it was mostly an empty chamber. There were some visitors in and out and some guest speakers. But for the most part, he was just kind of talking to himself, and it felt like practice.
A child, you describe. That's a harsh word.
Or I just imagine if you ever played The Sims, like one of the Sims talking to the mirror, trying to up their politician points.
It was like he had a
giving
hairbrush and he was in a mirror and he was talking about data collection.
I mean, this definitely wasn't as compelling as was his last filibuster about we can't drone strike.
It was
Americans.
about a policy that doesn't exist. It was like we can't drone strike Americans
on American
soil, even though we don't do that. So. Yeah, but this filibuster was actually about something real, but it wasn't actually filibuster.
Yeah, did it do anything other than inconvenience, say you or other senators?
It got hashtag Stand with Rand trending on Twitter for a little bit. And,
okay, but substantively,
no, I don't think it actually did anything.
Do you think it do you think perhaps it expanded the reach of this argument that the metadata collection should not be renewed? Do you think people were convinced, or it drew any actual attention to the matter?
I don't think it did. I think it drew some attention to Rand Paul, and I think it drew, some more support from people who already support him. But I doubt it convinced many people that didn't agree with him already to agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, the question, and we asked Dave Weigel this a little while ago, is whether Rand Paul has kind of missed his moment in the sun. He kind of missed the moment to talk about Baltimore in an insightful way. And you see him kind of weaving in and out of the main conversation, which seems to be more and more dominated by people like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. Is he going to be able to recapture some of this focus, some of the spotlight?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's the problem with beginning to campaign so early, is that you peak early, and it's very difficult to regain that sort of momentum later down the line. So he started really campaigning like a candidate in April of last year, and he was out campaigning all over the country and doing speeches and getting donations and doing all these things that candidates do. And he got a lot of very good press for it. He was the most interesting man in politics. He was profiled by The New Yorker and Time and all of these publications. And I can't see that happening again for quite some time. He's not going to have a moment again like that for a while.
Well, unlike every other candidate in the Republican and also the Democratic field for 2016, he is not campaigning as a strict libertarian, but certainly plenty of libertarian or libertarian-ish leanings. Maybe not plenty, but at least some. But you have actually written about why, quote-unquote, real libertarians hate Rand Paul. Why is that?
Well, they disagree with him for his position on foreign policy now. I mean, he was for bombing ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. He signed the Iran letter, which I think was the last straw for a lot of people. And then on social issues, he has sort of a very murky position on gay marriage. It should be up to the states, but he wants a federal amendment to ban abortion.
Has he been consistent on his gay marriage-related murkiness?
I think the murkiness has been very consistent. Yes.
Well, at least there's consistency there.
He takes these, all of his positions for the most part are so nuanced, and it's very difficult to pin down exactly what he believes. And I think it makes it easy for him to get away with it without being charged with flip-flopping, but it makes it very difficult to understand where he stands exactly.
Okay, well, we'll be back with Olivia and Nuzzi in just a moment. Thanks for listening to The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
They called her Little Sanju. She was born in a village at the foot of the Himalayas, the smallest of 7 brothers and sisters.
My family was very poor. To get by, we raised cows and we made small things for tourists out of bamboo. But we were always hungry, and no matter how hard he tried, my father was always in debt. When I was 11, my father told me I had to go to work making carpets. I had to leave with a man who took me to the carpet factory. The broker who took me away got paid, but they never paid my father anything. I made knots from 4 in the morning until 8 at night. There was never a day off. I was always hungry. I cut my fingers while weaving and had to weave with cut fingers. My hands began to look like my grandmother's. I cried every night. I thought the rest of my life would be only this.
It takes 1 million knots to make one 8x10 rug. In the 1990s, 1 million children were enslaved making carpets in South Asia. Then a hero entered the picture. It was you. If you knew how these carpets were made, you would no longer think they were so beautiful. And if you could choose a better rug, your buying power could end child slavery in the rug industry. From that simple idea, Goodweave was born. Here's how it works. To earn the Goodweave label, companies agreed not to employ children. Goodweave makes sure by conducting surprise inspections. When children are found, Goodweave helps them.
2 years ago, a Goodweave inspector named Grona found me in the factory. When I saw him, I was scared, but Grona put his arm around me and told me it would be okay. Grona took me to Hamrogar, a home for rescued carpet kids run by Goodweave. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to school.
Today, thousands of children like Sanju have been educated and rescued by Goodweave. And because you chose the Goodweave label, 3/4 of those million children weaving carpets are now free. And Sanju, with Goodweave's support, she's able to attend her village school and live at home where she belongs. Now that's a beautiful rug that tells a beautiful story. Stand with Sanju. Insist on the Goodweave label.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, welcome back to the Bill Press Show. It's 26 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, reporter for the Daily Beast. I'm here with my butler, Aswin Soup Singh.
I'm dying of fire.
We're joined by our colleague, Olivia Nuzzi. How are you? Good morning.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So one thing that was released this week is the intelligence community released a whole bunch of documents related to the books and things that Osama bin Laden was reading when he was shot in the face by SEAL Team 6. Along with it, though, Olivia, they found an application for Al-Qaeda. What do you make of this? So what do you think is on this application form?
I don't know, but I want to fill it out.
The question
Nervous laughter
is to paraphrase. It's like, hi, how are you? Are you okay with suicide missions? Like, how do you feel? How do you feel about blowing yourself up for a good cause?
What do you think it's like? Height, weight, home address,
references,
social security number, references.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah. What are your references?
See, like, how do you get experience as a suicide bomber though? Because it's like, it's like jobs that you need.
You play video games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's really.
It's like I played Command and Conquer when I was a kid. It's like I can do this. It's I wonder if they have boxes for religion, like if it's like a census form.
Ethnicity.
Yes.
Religion. Were you a member of the Marines?
Are you a spy? Yes. No. Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe.
What if it's like an OkCupid form?
Oh, God.
96% compatible. 82% willing
Smoker.
to engage.
Yes, no. Yeah. That's really the...
Yeah.
That's really what seals the deal.
Look, if you're a suicide bomber, it's dangerous to smoke.
It is.
It's dangerous to smoke around these.
During, yeah.
I mean, it's
favorite movie, favorite book. Grapes of Wrath.
No, the funny thing that I saw on the list of the Osama bin Laden materials was the self-help book. Now, the intelligence community has actually made the assessment that he was not reading the book. I don't know how they made this assessment.
Yeah, and now he's dead.
I would like to believe
so.
He's reading the book.
Supposedly it was for a family member.
A close friend.
Yeah, close friend.
Just asking for a friend. How do I get out of this dark cave?
Anyways, you're listening to Bill Press Show. We'll be back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them. She's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning and welcome back to The Bill Press Show. It's 33 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, reporter for The Daily Beast, here with my maid, Aswin Soupsang. And we're joined by guitarist for Good Charlotte, Billy Martin. He's also an illustrator. He's here to chat with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Hi, Billy. It's Swin. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
No problem. I'm all good, man.
Cool. So, as I understand it, you will be in D.C. not this weekend, but next weekend for Awesome Con, Washington, D.C.'s premier comic and pop culture convention. So besides being the guitarist for Good Charlotte, you are also a comic book illustrator. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your influences, like your favorite comics as a kid, and what kind of stuff you like making, mostly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, honestly, I think people are surprised to hear that I always envisioned this being my job. I thought since I was a little kid I would either work in animation or in comics. That was always my dream. And somewhere in my teenage years, it was cooler to play guitar than to say I liked comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just swayed me that way into music, and I've been very fortunate to have a music career. But my passion really lies in art. So I've been kind of going back to it like really seriously the last few years, and yeah, I've been working in comics. So most recently, I've been drawing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic that's based off of the new Nickelodeon animated series.
Nice.
And that's been really fun because I have two sons, and Ninja Turtles runs their life. So, being in Good Charlotte did not resonate to them at all. But now that I was drawing a Turtles comic, I've officially made it to them. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I grew up on Disney. I love Disney. I still love Disney. Any and all Disney things was big on me. And the normal Marvel comics. I loved Spider-Man, X-Men. I liked Batman, and when Image Comics started in the 90s, that was like when I was really first getting into comics. I was probably 10 or something at the time, and the whole Spawn, Todd McFarlane, and Image and all that stuff resonated with me big time.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about the acceptance of comic book culture in the recent years, because if you look at all of the biggest movies of all time, right? If you look at the top 10, a lot of those are comic book movies, and I think you and I come from the same generation. I remember Image Comics and Spawn when I was around 10 or 11, and it was a game changer. And comic book culture back then, though, was not mainstream by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So how has it kind of matured over the years?
I think Image had a big moment because there used to be this like comics code, like a I don't know, an organization that would go through the comics and make sure that they were essentially PG-13, because they knew lots of kids were reading comic books. And you saw the little code on the comics, the Marvel and the DC books, and you knew, your parents knew it was safe for you to read. But Image came out and they said, we're going to not use that, and we're going to specifically make books that are a little bit more violent, maybe deal with a little bit more serious themes, and really make the comics that we know people want. So then, of course, as a kid, you're like, oh, I want that one even more now because I can't have it. And I think that sort of it definitely had a big impact on comics. And nowadays, I mean, not every, but most of the big comic stories, instead of being sort of like a tongue-in-cheek superhero story, they're talking about, terrorists attacking and how a comic book character can come save the city from it. It's like they're taking these sort of like real life scenarios and having people relate to, what if this really happened and there was these superheroes, how would they react? So I definitely think the whole Image thing opened up to more serious adult context for the books to happen, and I think it probably got a lot more people into comics who weren't maybe paying attention to it before.
Hi, Billy, I gotta ask you, as a lead guitarist for Good Charlotte, the pop punk band of my childhood, if I may be so blunt, how does it compare the rush of performing on stage live for an audience to the obviously very different sensation of seeing something you drew published and publicized? What is the difference in like emotions and visceral response in your in the two art forms?
I guess there has to be some similarity because I do crave both, as an artist and an entertainer. I love getting on stage and playing. That's definitely something that when I don't do for a while, I really feel like I need to. And the same thing with art. When I finish a piece, the first thing I want to do is share it. I want to see what kind of reactions it gets from people. I want to see how, it makes people think. So it is a similar feeling, I guess. I think most artists, whether they admit it or don't, do crave that sort of, you want to see what people think. You want the feedback. You want to see like how your art resonates. And oftentimes you will spend a lot of time on a piece that is personal to you. You'll put it out there and you might get minimal response. And then you're baffled by like, okay, I put all this time into it. I feel like it did something awesome. What's wrong, And then you might just do like, oh man, it's been a while since I posted something, and you've got a quick little rough sketch of something you're working on. You're like, I'll just put a little sort of work in progress piece up, and then all of a sudden you get so much feedback from that, and you think, okay, why did somebody like this versus that? And I guess that, but versus on stage, when you go on stage in front of your audience, 90% of the time, it's going to be awesome. There's those rare shows where you go out and you're like, something just didn't click, it didn't feel the same. So I guess there's a little bit difference there, that the stage show is usually more rewarding, whereas art is open to interpretation. It's a little more of a gamble, but to some degree, I would say it's a similar vibe.
I want to ask you about the progressive nature of comic books, because I've always found comic books to be way ahead of the curve, right? Even if you look at going all the way back to X-Men, right? That's a pretty clear allegory to, racism at a time when people were struggling with racism. You look at now, right. Captain Marvel is a Muslim woman. Thor is a woman. A couple of characters have been written out of the closet, as it were. Iceman being the most recent one. How do comic books kind of play into that progressive nature with their audience?
Well, I think since I've been doing a lot of Comic-Cons, I've come to notice this sort of acceptance in the community that, maybe you are sort of a closet comic book fan, and at work, you're just, quote unquote Joe from accounting, and you show up at Comic-Con and Joe from accounting is dressed in spandex and a cape, and he's like, he's in his element, he's in his zone, and like at work they would be like, Joe, like you're such a dork, at Comic-Con they're gonna be like, Joe, I love your costume. So like there's sort of this acceptance in the comic book world that when people are there, they're in their zone, they're with their people. And so I think the idea of breaking stereotypes in comics and outing characters and putting, different races or cultures in the spotlight that do sort of struggle with fitting in, stuff like that, I kind of think it all works together, and I would think most of the comic book world is pretty accepting of that. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a very judgment-free zone, the comic book followers and characters, yeah.
Although, the fanboys are as serious as ever. You think music critics are tough, but it's the same thing. You draw something and they're like, oh, that's the wrong costume. How could you draw him in this costume? But, there is that. But in general, it's a very accepting community.
Good stuff. Thanks, Billy. By the way, if you want to check out AwesomeCon here in D.C., it's May 29th through the 31st at the Convention Center here in Washington. We're going to tweet out a link if you want to get more information. But yeah, it's going to be next weekend, awesomecon.com. Thanks, Billy.
Yeah, thanks, guys. No problem.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning. Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. It's 45 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack, reporter for The Daily Beast, and I'm here with my colleague,
Aswin Subsang, deputy social media editor for thedailybeast.com.
Wow. Colleague.
I know.
He's
upgraded
I'm
me.
so tired.
This is like the last big, long segment that we have here on the show, and you've finally been upgraded. Congratulations.
Upgrade from concubine, intern, geisha.
Geisha. Oh, no.
We are here with Peter Ogburn, who's the executive producer of the show.
Doing a hell of a job, boys. I love it.
And our topic for this segment, Jeb Bush, talking about climate change. Here's what he had to say about climate change earlier this week.
First of all, the climate is changing.
I don't think the science is clear of what percentage is man-made and what percentage is natural. I just don't. It's convoluted. And for the people to say the science is decided on this is just really arrogant, to be honest with you. It's this intellectual arrogance that now you can't have a conversation about it even.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but when I hear that, and I hear not just Jeb Bush, but other Republican politicians talking about the intellectual arrogance of people who buy into this scientific consensus on man-made climate change, that to me that just sounds like a step above Marco Rubio or anybody else saying, well, I'm not a scientist, but let me weigh in on this. There's a little bit of an intellectual disparity or dishonesty or inconsistency between them taking the word of doctors or scientific consensus about anything else versus this subject of man-made climate change. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm as cynical as anyone else. But on this issue, there seems to be pretty broad and deep scientific consensus. We're talking the vast, vast, vast majority of scientists believe in climate change that's being affected by human action. I think that there's very, very little doubt in the scientific community that, of course, greenhouse gases do affect the way that our world works.
And when climate change skeptics or denialists talk about this sort of thing, they sort of muddy the waters of what the term scientific consensus means. Of course, you can find a certain number of scientists who disagree about any subject at any time. Like, that's not the meaning of scientific consensus that 100% of scientists will tell you.
Exactly.
Like, but if you actually look at the peer-reviewed studies and the percentage...
Which I know you've all read. You've read them all.
Yeah. or the outcome of these peer-reviewed studies, and when you stack up the percentage of how many scientists do agree that this is something that mankind is causing and that this will lead to this degree of devastation, it is overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a consensus.
And I don't know when we're going to get past this speed bump or hurdle that this is such a partisan issue. I don't understand that. I don't know why it has to be such a divide between party lines and why a Republican can't just acknowledge that we need to do something. I mean, I understand why, because they've made it such a partisan issue. But yeah, it drives me nuts.
And moving on a little bit here. So when you found a slightly different topic on a slightly different topic.
It's still sciencey.
It's still sciencey, but it's a little bit more heartwarming.
This is a peer-reviewed study that you have read in depth.
Sure thing. And yes, this is a little bit sunnier than the destruction of the earth that we're causing. Apparently, according to a new study, drinking 2 cups of coffee a day could perk up your performance in bed. Could improve your sex life.
I do. Sex life.
Dear.
I thought you were talking about push-ups. On there.
You do push-ups,
in bed?
Yeah.
Is your mattress doing them the right way?
But yeah, and doctors also warn that drinking more than 4 cups of coffee a day can be dangerous, causing restlessness, tremors, irritability, insomnia, and stomach upset.
I mean, that's a real. I mean, I've already had 4 cups of coffee this morning, so I don't know how I'm gonna get some tremors or whatever. But like, you clearly don't. You clearly don't buy this. You don't. You drink coffee. You don't like the study.
I mean, it's not a matter whether I buy it or not. Maybe this is the experience for the vast majority of men. But no, I like to stay. Okay. Let's
put our cards on the table, gentlemen.
Let's be blunt about this. Let's take our trousers off.
No,
literally.
No, I would like to think that most men like to stay hydrated during sex, and even like 1 cup of coffee leaves me parched, leaves me feeling a little bit more dehydrated than I'd like to be while engaging in Congress. How do you feel about this, Tim?
I don't feel dehydrated after having a cup of coffee.
Okay, a couple of cups of coffee.
I mean, it's good to stay good and hydrated throughout the day.
I mean,
5 to 7 cups.
B12 vitamins are great for helping you stay more active, more vivacious.
I like coffee, and in this context, I think it's a valuable addition to your sex life.
Is your girlfriend gonna call in?
Oh dear.
I don't know. I don't know. She's got to go to work. I don't know if she's still listening.
Oh dear. Yeah, they say that. Yeah, I'm looking at this story. 2 to 3 cups a day could help ward off erectile dysfunction, and help you perform better in bed for men.
Cool.
I don't drink coffee.
I mean,
I feel a little left out.
How does that?
I'm doing just fine, by the way. I'm doing just fine. Strong like bull.
Red Bull, he says.
Sure, something like that.
Well, I would appreciate the same version of this same study, but replacing coffee with, like, bourbon. 2 cups of bourbon a day. Will that improve?
But I'm worried about you getting
Then you just don't
dehydrated.
care.
I'm worried about you getting dehydrated with the bourbon.
That's a good point.
You know, that's as much a problem as anything else.
Also significantly more of a depressant than coffee.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think of like what are the times that you're going to be drinking coffee, anyways. You know, you're not going to be drinking in the.
Well, you have to think about when you're drinking coffee and its correlation to when you'll be having sex.
Right. It's like, hold up, honey, I got to run to the bathroom and chug a glass of coffee.
Yeah. Right.
Or do you start dating at your local Starbucks?
Yeah, right. Like that morning cup of coffee, you know, I don't know if that's how everybody starts their work day.
Okay. Bottom line, coffee makes people more pleasant to be around, and I think that's just, you know, that's the bottom line here. This is not just about sex. This is about
just
2 to 3. This is 2 to
here.
3 cups of coffee makes you better at everything.
That's a more reasonable conclusion from this.
You
Yes.
know,
Coffee make you better at
narrow in on
including that.
Yeah. We'll be back in just a minute here. You're listening to The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
on your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. We're nearing a conclusion here. It's 56 minutes past the hour. I'm Tim Mack with my indentured servant, Aswin Soup, saying we're both from the Daily Beast.
You did so well last segment.
You've been demoted.
Yeah, from colleague to indentured servant.
You were colleague for like 5 minutes.
It's a good thing we don't have one more segment, or else he would like bump me down to like donkey.
with my service animal.
Yeah. My seeing eye dog, Aswin Soups.
Right.
I'll have to remember that for the next show.
If we're ever invited back.
I don't think we will.
You'll never be invited back. Who are we kidding here? I'm kidding,
yeah.
of course. You did a
We'll
great
see.
show.
We'll see.
We'll of course have you back.
We did a good job. There was only a little bit of sexual innuendo.
No, we had a whole segment on sex.
A little sexual
that
innuendo,
wasn't
a lot of
innuendo,
sexual
though.
tension. Am I right, guys?
That's what makes the show interesting.
Yeah, like,
is the tension.
name
That's
a-
why you watch sitcoms. That's why you watch anything.
Name a good Shakespearean play where sexual tension is in front and center.
There you go.
Actually,
Forsooth.
you can name a lot of them, actually. But we were on the steps of Memorial Day weekend.
What are you guys doing?
We, Swin and I and a bunch of friends are going to go up to a beach house up in Delaware. We're
Look
gonna
at you
spend
guys.
some
You
time
work
with it.
together. You live together. You vacation together. This is great. You should go to the beach.
Yeah,
Do they make things weird?
Well, we've lived together for almost.
There's a lot of tension here.
You guys really clammed up there.
Well, we've lived and worked together for almost a year. I'm surprised one of us hasn't killed the other.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's working out, right?
So far, we've come pretty
Tim
close.
has said
to, like,
nothing, by the way.
I just, we're.
But we're going to enjoy live tweeting the beach
Fun.
this weekend. What are your plans with the family?
Oh, it's just going to be, I'm going to a baseball game. Friends coming in from out of town.
You're going to do a barbecue or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll barbecue.
The weather's
why
going to
not?
be great.
I'll
I think.
grill. Yeah.
It's
we'll.
going to get up to the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Well,
nice job, guys. You did a great job
Thank
today.
you.
We'll have you back soon.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Tim Mack with the
Get
Daily
lost.
Beast.
I'm Aswin Subsang, also with the Daily Beast. We really hope you enjoyed listening. Take care.
Have a great weekend.
This is The Bill Press Show.